writers, and welcome to our last Writer's Bridge of the year. So as you have probably noticed, our wonderful co-founder, Ashleigh Renard, has moved on to focus on making everyone's bedroom experience better. I love watching her on TikTok and hearing her euphemisms so that she can talk about bedroom electronics without getting banned off of TikTok. It's very awesome. And my favorite present this holiday season, I'm thinking of her as my beautiful Diwali present, is the lovely Charla Yates from the Creative Nonfiction Foundation and our brand new Writer's Bridge co-host. Please feel free to welcome Charla with some jazz hands or some awesome applause, whatever suits you the best. We are so glad to have Charla on board. We have a super exciting guest for January who we'll be telling you about at the end of this episode, and we have some interesting changes coming up as well. Today's episode is Ask Us Anything. What do you need to know to sell your book, reach your audience, and build your literary community in 2023? And before we dive into introducing our special guest, I want to share a Writer's Bridge success story that we just got in our email today. Catherine Young emailed, I attended the Writer's Bridge, chatted with others on Zoom, listened to the videos. Most helpful for me was the time you looked at query letters. Though I had been querying, I had not gotten a positive response. You looked at my query, gave me some suggestions. That was a do-overs episode about 6 months ago. I used your ideas and signed a contract for my memoir, Black Diamonds, Blue Flames, A Childhood Colored by Coal, which will be published in September 2023. So congratulations, Catherine Young. We cannot wait to see your book in the world. Our special guest today, Charla, will you introduce our wonderful and fantastic guest?
Allison Renard is an award-winning author, journalist, and editor. Her work has been featured in The Washington Post, NBC, Glamour, and many more. I know you know her book, Knocked Down, a high-risk memoir that came out in March 2022. Her middle-grade social justice book, We Got Game, 35 Female Athletes Who Changed the World, was honored as a Mighty Girl's Best Book of the Year, and the best-selling Never Too Young, 50 Unstoppable Kids Who Made a Difference won a Parents' Choice Award. Welcome, Allison.
Allison has joined forces with fellow editor and journalist Megan Margulies to create The Witches of Pitches, which is an editing and consulting service that helps both aspiring and accomplished writers develop their queries, proposals, pitches, manuscripts, articles, and essays. The Witches of Pitches also has a very special offer for you that we're going to tell you about at the end of the show. Allison, after successfully marketing your own memoir, you created a series of articles and a workshop on marketing and platform building for Writer's Digest. What have you been writing about?
Yeah, so this is actually a very exciting thing that happened. And it really talks about the power of networking and making connections with your editors and keeping in contact with them, because I pitched a one-off article with Writer's Digest about platform building. And I figured and it was a cold pitch, I'd never worked with them. And the editor came back to me and said, how about if you do 8 articles instead? And so I was so excited about that. I put my imposter syndrome aside and I focused on these 8 articles. And one is about, how to write a stellar pitch letter, to, get people to interview you. Another one is how to be a good literary citizen, how to use social media and feel good about it, how to collaborate with other authors. So that's been really exciting. And then it turned into a workshop. And now I'm doing another series about based off of The Witches of Pitches, the new editing and consulting business Megan Margulies and I have just started. And so that's going to be about how to write a really good query letter, how to write a book proposal, how to write a pitch letter, which is something that I feel like a lot of people kind of struggle with. So we really want to help with that.
I love it. I forgot to hit the mute all button, so I'm going to do that real quick. And Allison, you will need to unmute yourself, and Charla, you will also need to unmute yourself. Yay! And now we can all have our dogs in the background, and nobody has to worry about it. So, Aileen, you and I were talking a little bit, you and I and Charlotte were talking a little bit at the beginning of when you first dropped in here. We're kind of sick of social media. What trends are you seeing in author platform as we go into 2023? Like, do you see anything sort of overall happening?
Well, obviously the pandemic has progressed and in-person events are back. And I'm seeing a lot of in-person events, but also a lot of Zoom events. So it's a really nice balance that we didn't have before the pandemic. And so now we can reach out to our local audiences, places we can travel, but also a wider audience on Zoom. Newsletters are becoming really popular. If you don't have a newsletter, you might consider getting that mailing list up and starting it. It's a big commitment, so really get your plan in place. And I think social media, it's always evolving. We're not leaving social media en masse. Twitter has been a disaster, but I think I built a lot of my platform on Twitter and I'm still there, and I think things are going to level out, and we just have to kind of go with it and figure out what's going to happen. Facebook groups have been a lifesaver. I love Facebook groups. So there's a lot of ways to continue to build your platform as things evolve.
I love it. So let's start with some questions that we got from email. Feel free, everybody, to drop your questions in the chat as well. Charlotte and I will be watching for those. One of our first questions here, R asks, I read a lot and I write a lot. When do you feel like you are successful? Is it a publishing deal? Is it getting your words on the page? How do you feel like you're a success? Aileen, do you know you're a success? And if you do, what told you that?
So, I struggle with a lot of imposter syndrome even now. I feel like if I sit down and stare at a blank screen and write 3 sentences or 3 great words, I'm a success. I think it really, it's a very individual thing. Of course, if I get an acceptance, it's very rewarding, it's validating, but just showing up and committing to the writing process makes you a success.
I would wholly agree with that. Charlotte, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I would agree as well. Yes.
I read a great thing today. I'm on the Kate McKean list. It's a Substack called Agents and Books. Highly recommended. I'm on the paid list. There's also a free list. They're both great. Today, she said, publishing is not here to validate you. It's not here to fill a hole somewhere. You're not going to be much different the day after your book is available than you were the day before, except that someone out there can now exchange money for your book. You have to divorce your self-worth from publishing. It is not going to solve that for you. And I got to tell y'all, I feel like on some level, I am extremely successful. I make a full-time living writing. I really love my life. I love teaching. I love getting to do all of the things I get to do. And I still don't feel like a real writer because my book is a craft book and real writers write novels. And if I was a real writer, I would have a novel. So remember, like, no matter how far you go, there's always going to be that imposter syndrome sitting on your shoulder going, you're not really a success. You don't really have it. And then you've got the you're great monster on the other shoulder going, if only they knew how amazing you were. If only they appreciated you. You're actually secretly terrible. Wait till they all find out, and it never goes away. Aileen, has it ever gone away for you?
Oh, no, never. I'm always like, I can't do it. Whenever somebody asks me to do something new, whether it's an editor or at the publishing or agent, my head is screaming, no, I can't do that. Why are they even asking me? And what I've actually learned to do is just not answer anybody's emails for at least an hour until I can process this and tell myself, of course I can do this. Why can't I do this? So just holding off on sending those emails has been really life-changing for me.
Yeah, I think it's really important to challenge yourself, like your own narrative, the internal narrative, and be like, wait, why do we think this? It's easy to get convinced by your own arguments if they're just feelings.
And two great comments in the chat too. Allison Lane says, your book is not a winning lottery ticket. It's just another way to share your expertise, your message, and your story. And Tanya Todd was taught imposters don't have imposter syndrome. So if you are questioning yourself, you are not an imposter. Brilliant, Tanya. Brilliant. Charlotte, what's our next question?
Jessica asks, how do I find a way to build a platform while being authentic? Platform building as for social media posts is not for me.
Aileen, you want to take that?
Yeah, so I actually wrote an entire article for Writer's Digest on how to use social media and feel authentic. And so if you don't like social media, you're not, you don't have to do it. There are so many other ways to build a platform, writing companion pieces, being on panels, doing workshops. But if you are on social media, you really want to be authentic. You don't just want to be a salesperson. So that means talking about your life, letting your audience hear your voice, and still being professional. You don't have to overshare. And also, a lot of writers don't realize this, but commenting on social media is just as important as posting. So you want to get into other people's threads and let them know who you are and get to know each other. And that's how you build community on social media. You also might consider friending influencers, friend editors. They're on social media for a break just like you. And that's a great way to network and make connections. I can't tell you how many articles have come out of my tweets, my posts, just being on social media or commenting on an editor's tweet or something like that.
So that leads really nicely into another question that we had. Amanda asks, engaging with readers is important, of course, but how far should we take the online conversation when we simply don't agree with the comment or perspective or position or advice the commenter is offering? When is enough enough? Is it okay to respond to some comments and ignore others, or is that a faux pas that screams small-mindedness? Charlotte, what do you think?
I mean, it's tricky, right? You don't want to engage the trolls because you realize that's what they're doing there, is waiting for some engagement. But you also want to make it clear to your followers that you don't agree by this and you don't stand by it. I think that, whether or not it's harmful is probably the way to look at it, like directly harmful to someone who would come across and read it themselves.
That makes sense, like especially if it's misinformation. Aileen, what do you do about commenters that you fully disagree with? And I'm not talking necessarily about you've got an article that went viral on Reader's Digest, there's 1,500 comments and some of them are idiots, but like on a smaller scale, when you're writing for Writer's Digest, so you're really writing for the community that you're in as a person, as well as the community that you're in as an expert, if that makes sense. Do you respond to some and ignore others? What do you do when you really just don't agree?
I think it really depends on each situation. The rule I go by is, I don't think I will ever change someone's mind on social media. And, I'm not going to get into a long dialogue. I'm going to say what I have to say. I'm going to maintain professionalism. I'm not going to make it personal. And some people, we're just not going to agree. Some people are just trolls, and you don't want to feed the trolls. You keep moving, and you make a simple comment, and there's no reason to get into like some sort of fight or match on social media. It's not professional. It doesn't necessarily make anybody look good, but you also have to, stand up for what's right. And if someone's doing harm, I think it's okay to call that out for sure. So I agree with Charla.
And I want to say too, that the thing to remember is that when people are commenting on you, that's because you have the platform. So right. You're already in a greater position of power than anybody who comments on you, because especially if this is an article or a blog, you have already been quote unquote endorsed by the people who have posted your work. So you already have more authority than anyone who is quibbling with you. There is great power in just overlook it, because not as many people read the comments as read your original article. And I'll also say that if something hits me, I will occasionally just write a whole blog about my contradictory opinion. Some of you might have seen the piece I wrote for Brevity a couple of weeks ago, where someone commented on a previous blog because they felt like I was just like money grubbing because I had written this whole blog of what I thought was useful content. And at the end, it said, by the way, I'm teaching this stuff. You can click through to this link and buy it. And on one hand, I didn't really want to like be too upset about it because the workshop was already sold out and I was already logging in to take the ad off the blog anyway. So like I kind of already won. But then I was also like, maybe people don't understand that the way to get 20 people to pay for something is to give away to 20,000 people for free so that they trust you as an expert and they're willing to do your stuff. They're willing to show up for what you want to give them, whether that's your book or your class or your coaching or your pitch refining or whatever. And so, yeah, I was sure petty and my feelings were hurt. So I stomped on over there and wrote 850 words and a whole bunch of people were like, yay, Allison. And I felt kind of small for engaging, but I also made a larger, more important point that mattered, so I think that's something to think about too. Charlotte, you have spent a long time being involved with Creative Nonfiction Magazine, and we have a great question in the chat from Rebecca, who says, my dream is to publish an essay collection. People told me when I started, it's not realistic. I would need to be famous. A memoir is actually more doable or sellable. I have a few essays published now, one with 2 million views, one viral-ish, a few others done pretty well. When or how can I realistically try for an essay collection? Charlotte, where does that rank relative to what other essay collections you've seen in the world?
Well, I think 2 million views is quite impressive. So kudos to you. I think, essay collections, I've heard that as well, that it's difficult to publish an essay collection, but it's difficult to publish in general. If that's what you want to write, I say write it. I've also been given the advice, this is, CNF, they publish magazine essays and stuff, so they don't do collections, but I've heard the advice as a writer to get certain essays published, not all of them, but a good percentage of them. And then you can see that you actually have something that is refined enough to put together in a collection. And that's probably the best way of seeing, if you're making the mark when it comes to reaching an audience. And I guess that would probably be my advice.
Aileen?
So I'm seeing, everybody says, like Charlotte says, it's hard to get published, right? So everyone says it's hard to publish memoir. It's hard to publish essay collections. But what I'm seeing now is essay collections that are really essays that are marketed as memoir, but have a loosely linked thread. So we don't have to call them essay collections. So that's how we get around it, right? So Bomb Shelter by Laura Mary Philpott is they're clearly essay collections. It's a great book, but it's not marketed as an essay collection. It's marketed as a memoir, and it does have certain themes that run throughout the book. So even if they're loosely tied together, I think it's doable, and I think you can consider different ways of marketing your essay collection.
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. And getting some of the essays published before you put together the memoir in essays or the essay collection or whatever is absolutely the way to go, because it's proof of concept. It builds your audience. It connects you with the people who are eventually going to buy your book. And people are dropping some great essay collection names that are not necessarily named essay collections in the chat. Daniela points out Untamed by Glennon Doyle and Broken by Jenny Lawson are basically essay collections. So is Run Towards the Danger by Sarah Poley. Blind Man's Bluff. James is fantastically funny, and I think you'll really like Blind Man's Buff. Charlotte, what's our next question?
Yes, Laura asked, now that Twitter is dead and Tribal is all left-wing politics, what other social media is good for authors to engage with other authors and their readers?
Aileen, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and say Twitter's not quite dead yet, that it's dying. Maybe it's dying a slow death. Maybe it'll be revived. I am still on Twitter. Like I I think I said earlier, I built my platform on Twitter, and I think writers are starting to find each other again. Editors are still putting out calls for pitches on Twitter, which is really important. But you also have, this goes back to choosing a platform that you're comfortable with, that's right for you. There's Instagram, there's TikTok, there's Facebook. I mean, there's so many different ways to reach your readers. And my two favorites are really Facebook and Twitter, because I like to write. I'm not so much into videotaping myself or doing reels or, recordings or whatever. So Facebook groups for me has been great. I have really reached so many people, and not just in the binders and writers groups, which are amazing, but in parenting groups and groups about women's issues and everything that I write about, and travel groups and things like that. So it's really just kind of thinking outside the box. What is your platform? What is your work about? And how can you join those groups and reach that audience?
Do you find these groups on Facebook, Morgan is asking, Aileen?
Yeah, so I'm in a lot of different Facebook groups. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I want to get Charlotte to talk a little bit about like the power of the webinar as if it is social media. But I also want to mention you can be genuine and strategic at the same time on these Facebook groups, whether they are binders groups, whether they are writers groups, or more importantly, groups that have an interest that intersects with what you want to talk about. So Aileen needs parenting groups. I'm getting ready to teach a webinar about how to run a financially worthwhile retreat that I'll be doing in February with Jane Friedman. And it occurs to me, I'm not talking about teaching methods. I'm not talking about writing technique. I'm talking about how do you plan and build an event. And so I put it on my calendar. I need to start re-engaging with all of the yoga groups that I have been part of and not super active in. I need to start re-engaging with the circus aerialist groups, because aerialists have retreats. And it's going to take a good month and a half of engaging regularly with no agenda, just commenting and sharing and helping as much as I can before I will feel legit about plunking my little promo into one of those groups and saying, hey, I've been loving our conversations. You might like to take my thing. But it really, I've said this before, being popular and being engaged in the community are the same behavior with different hats. Charlotte, you have hosted or co-hosted so many webinars. Does a webinar function like social media in any way? Does that connect you with people that are going to then look you up and find you in more places?
Yes, certainly. I think as if you're presenting the webinar, it's an opportunity to meet lots of people. And if you give them the opportunity to reach out to you, potentially making those connections, I would think you'd want to make connections. And that's the reason you would want to present a webinar. I would also say if you're attending a webinar and it has a breakout session like this, you can also meet other people. You start seeing names, similar names that pop up in your webinars. Other people that are participants as well. You can find, if you attend the same series of webinars, you can meet people that way as well. But I think the key in everything that you're doing, whether you're posting on social media or you're presenting a webinar, is authenticity and generosity. And that's, I think we all can agree that Allison does that so well, and that people are doing things that feel suspect, or you feel like they're trying to promote, like that man was trying to accuse you of, Allison, which that's not what you were doing, where you give very little to hope to gain a lot from someone monetarily. Those things don't go so well, and they don't have long-lasting power, but relationships do. Authentic relationships do.
I 100% agree. Aileen, are you getting on any other social media? Carolyn asks, has anyone gotten on any of the alternatives like Post or Mastodon? Samantha says she's on Mastodon. Abby has set up accounts on Post, Mastodon, Tribal, Hive, never used them. Are you doing any other social media, or are you like me? You're still clinging onto the lifeboat of Twitter going, no, Jack, there's totally room on this door for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm never one of the first to be on a new platform. I kind of wait and see what happens with it. I feel like I'm already spending a lot of time on social media, probably a little more time than I should be. But so I don't want to add another platform until I know it's going to be, worthwhile, and it's going to be around for a while, and it's going to really help with my platform, with my audience, and having the people that I'm trying to engage with on that platform.
Absolutely. Kara asks in the chat, could we talk about following up? If you are trying to book a book event, if you are trying to get somebody to review your book, if you are trying to visit a school or visit a library, how long do you wait to follow up after you pitch? Aileen, how long should we wait before we follow up?
I first of all, yes, always follow up, especially with editors. Editors' inboxes are a dumpster fire, and they want you to follow up, especially if you already have a relationship with them. What I would say is, before you pitch them, though, really do your research. Make sure that your pitch is for the right publication, the right editor, and the right time. But absolutely follow up. Usually I wait a week. Sometimes I'll wait 2 weeks, but it really not usually that long. So usually a week to 10 days is a good amount. And definitely follow up. And you can follow up politely and say, just checking in to see if you're interested in this piece. And that's it. One sentence, and it's easy.
And Abby says, make sure they haven't just run a similar piece. Megan says, follow up. I sold an essay by a pitch to New York Times on my 4th follow-up. Charla, when you are fielding webinar pitches, whether that's for the Creative Nonfiction webinar series, whether that's for anything else that you're booking, should people follow up? Should they trust that it made it to your inbox? How soon do you want to hear back?
Yeah, I appreciate an initial nudge saying, hey, I just want you to know, I submitted your proposal. Just make sure that you see it. And that kind of engagement, I think it's always a good idea, both as the administrator side, but also as the person who's pitching, to put a deadline on the calendar to reach out again. If they said they'll get back to you by a certain date, it's totally appropriate to reach out at that date and say if it's still on the books or still moving forward, or if there's something they need to wait for. Open communication, I think is good. Berating people with email is never a good idea. So, being patient is part of that as well. But I don't think you should ever hesitate to ask questions, and just to make sure that things are going.
And if you put it on your calendar, it's not on your brain. You can let it go until it pops back up on the calendar. And then, oh, today is the day I nudge, instead of, did it come yet? Did it come yet? Did it come yet? How about today? Refresh. Let it be easy for yourself as well. Aileen, Daniela asks in the chat, if you are traveling for one book thing, how can you try to pack more book events or book things into that trip? How can we make that airline ticket really pay off?
Okay, so this is a great question. So I traveled to Delaware over the summer for a book event. I happened to turn it into a vacation because it was in Rehoboth Beach. But what I did was I contacted all of the local radio shows. I contacted all of the local newspapers, all of the women's organizations and motherhood organizations. I got into the Facebook groups in Rehoboth, the local women's Facebook group, parenting Facebook group, and all let them know about my book, what was happening, got some interviews, got some press. And so that's a whole new audience in Delaware that I never, in this small town, and they came out and they delivered, and I sold out of every single book at that book event. And then, other people started asking me one thing leads to another, right? So then I got more press, more events lined up, more speaking engagements. Even if they were over Zoom, it's still a win. So just, if you're going to a place, reach out to bookstores, libraries, even the Chamber of Commerce put something up about my book. So think outside the box. Hit as many possibilities as you can.
Absolutely. And I would say too, this is where planning ahead a little bit helps. If you know you're going to a place more than like a month in advance, now is the time to follow every local independent bookstore on Instagram and start resharing all their posts on your Instagram stories. Now is the time to find out, are any of the authors that you know also based in that area? Is there anybody you could hook up with and do a joint event? Never underestimate the power of advance notice. And I say that as someone who I found my husband by changing my OkCupid profile to say I lived in Dubai 3 months before I went and pre-screening guys. Advanced knowledge is really the way to go. Charlotte, what's our next question?
Katie asks, if you are a fiction writer, is it permissible and wise to write nonfiction articles for earning money while you wait to be published? Or will it confuse readers and or potential social media followers?
Write whatever you want to write, whenever you want to write it, get paid for it. Listen, I am a children's book author. I am a journalist. I write op-eds, I write articles, I write craft, I'm a memoirist. You're a writer, so write about the topics you know. Absolutely.
And make money. You should make as much money as you can. You should absolutely make money. There is almost no money to be made in writing. So if you find the little niche that makes money, please make that money. And plus, people who get to know you will help promote your book, even if the book itself does not appeal to them. There's been some research that shows that it's not your friends who buy your book, other than some of them feel obligated to. It's the people your friends tell about your book who buy the book. And so the more you can get people invested in your success, the better you are. We had a really nice question in the chat here, which was, this might be sensitive, but how can nonfiction writers who identify as women appeal to men? How can we all become Brené Brown? Charlotte, do you see books appealing primarily to a particular gender, or do you see books having a wider appeal?
I think that's a great question, and I wish I had an answer. I think maybe booksellers have a better idea, or who's paying attention to that. I do know that as far as memoir goes, I have a sense that's mostly women who are writing memoir and possibly reading it as well. I also know that there's always been an issue, and I don't remember, there's an article that went out. I wish I could remember what it was, but it was talking about how men do not read women authors at a really low percentage rate. It's just quite astounding, actually. So I wish I had a better answer.
Aileen, what's your experience been? You wrote a memoir about being pregnant. It is a pretty female body centered topic. Did dudes read your book?
So I have a great story about this. So if you've read the book or you know about the book, it's about being on bed, being a city girl who moves to the country and ends up on pregnancy-related bed rest for 5 months in this rickety old farmhouse. And part of the story is that on the day I end up finding out I'm on bed rest, we buy a power equipment dealership. And we know nothing about running a business at this point. This is my husband and myself. And so fast forward 10 years when the book comes out, or 15 years, because it was actually 15 years from that time till the book came out. We sell the book in our store, in our dealership, which has our customer base is like 95% men. And so men are reading Knocked Down, a high-risk memoir. They're buying this book. And they're coming, and these are like gruff men who like drive big tractors, trailers all day, and they're reading about pregnancy-related bed rest. And to me, that is the biggest win I could have hoped for, is to really make men understand what women go through. And so that's been really exciting. And so my husband will come home and tell me what somebody has said about the book, and I'll be like, really? He read this book? And it's fantastic. So I think that the long and short of it is try to get your books into places that are going to appeal to a different variety of readers, and get into magazines that men read. Do interviews with journalists who can place your interviews in these magazines, and reviews as well.
I absolutely 100% agree. And there's some great stories in the chat about how people are finding that their memoir also appeals to men. Hey, Allison Lane, if you're handy, I have a publicist question that I think you might be a great person to answer. So I'm going to kind of read these couple of combined questions here. Morgan wants to know, is it better to have somebody else pitch you or pitch yourself to, say, a radio station? Like, should you hire a publicist and or draft a publicist to help you, or even just hire a friend to be the person who reads your press release over the phone? Rachel asks, do you recommend hiring a publicist? She's looking for custom advice on promoting her deaf themed book. And there's one last question that kind of ties into this as well. Miriam says her book was released in 2021 during full-on COVID. She had a Zoom book tour. Should she try and organize an in-person book tour now that things have opened up, even though it is 2 years since the publication date? So should I get a publicist to pitch me? Is that going to be more valuable than pitching myself? Should I bother trying to tour 2 years later? And where the heck do I find a publicist for a special thing? Allison Lane, take it away.
Okay, these are my favorite questions. My favorite questions, because I do not want you to spend a nickel unless you know what you're getting. Okay, and most everything we talk about here is a DIY situation, because as writers, we are DIYing the writing. Like, it comes straight out of our brains. So for sure, all of us can write a press release, but PS, nobody wants a press release. What they want is a pitch, and you already know how to pitch. So I think the first question is, should I go on an in-person book tour 2 years afterward? Generally, the cost of the going someplace is quite an investment. So unless you actually want to see downtown St. Louis, I don't know that I would make the trip just to see the 14 people who come to visit you, unless you can turn that into not something for your book, but an opportunity to talk about your message, how you solve a problem, how you answer a need in the marketplace. And when I say marketplace, like in the world, and that you shine a light on a segment of the population or the type of people who are forgotten or overlooked. PS, pregnant women, like Aileen has. And when you focus on your message and what that can offer to an audience, the opportunities arise. But if you think about it as, I'm promoting my thing, nobody wants to buy your whatever. Like, no one. People want to invest in answers or something that brings them joy or something that they already need. So number one, find out who your audience is and where they are. And if they're in St. Louis, that's great. But they probably would love to have access to you for a webinar, or you could be a guest on a podcast that they already listen to, because your audience, no matter who it is, it's your job to know where they are. They are always together, and they are always clapping cymbals, asking for more solutions and more voices. If they love memoir, they're listening to Ronit Plank's podcast, Let's Talk Memoir. You know, you don't need to go hunting and pecking for, like, where are they? Are they under this rock? No, they're always together. Second question, do you need to hire a publicist? I don't know. I mean, I know Rachel. Hi, Rachel. And I have seen her triumph of getting this book deal and selling this book. Here's when a publicist is very, very helpful. When you need to multiply your when you need to clone yourself because there's so much to do, you might need an extra pair of hands. Then that's a good use of a publicist, but also that publicist is going to ask you, why is this relevant? What's the news hook? What stories do you want to tell? Where can I find your audience? You are in charge of giving them all the ingredients, and all they do is follow the recipe. So if you feel like you need an extra set of hands, freaking awesome. But if you don't, and you think, well, I have time to do this, then get in touch, because as a career marketer and publicist, I can really teach you how to do this and give you the templates that I use, and everything I like is fill in the blank, like Mad Libs. And I don't want people to pay someone else to write a press release, when really what you want is to contribute to a reporter's story about this. Because we all read content, but no one really goes to a news article that says, Allison, I'm talking about myself, like, Allison's new book is out. That's not,
nobody cares that we have published a book. They care about the content.
They care about themselves. Yeah.
Allison, that is so helpful. And thank you so much for jumping in. I really appreciate it.
That was long-winded, and I'm sorry about it.
No, you were awesome. You were absolutely fabulous. So, and Stephanie points out in the chat, it would be so much less expensive to use a virtual assistant than a publicist if what you need is help with sending out pitches and following up. And then you could hire someone like Allison Lane, like the Witches of Pitches, Aileen Weintraub and Megan Margulies. Help me write the pitch. What should I be sending to the NPR station? What should I be sending to the public library? And those are the kind of people who can help you with that. Charla, what's our next question?
Abby asks, I'm wrapping up my memoir's first draft. I'm on the last chapter now and plan to then shift gears to my proposal and complete a solid second draft before querying agents. I've been working with a memoir coach, so my first draft, while not ready for outside eyes yet, is much further along than a vomit draft. I also built a good platform of bylines in the last 2 years, and the essay I published in Washington Post a year ago that is pivotal to my memoir was recently picked up 10 different international editions of Reader's Digest.
Wow,
In other words,
yay. Nice,
yeah.
Abby.
Good job. In other words, I feel like the time is right to test the waters in the next few months rather than wait until I've completed my 7th draft. Looking for your opinion on whether this plan makes sense. Well, you wrote the book, 7 drafts. Allison, what do you think?
Honestly, Abby, sell that sucker on proposal. Polish those first 3 chapters hard, keep publishing and try to sell it. So, because Abby, you know your skill level. I know your skill level. If someone says to you, we need this book in 8 months, you're going to be able to finish that book. Aileen, what do you think Abby's plan should be?
Well, I've been watching Abby and she's amazing. She's such a powerhouse of pitching and writing, and her words are so beautiful. And I agree, writing a proposal, first of all, most books do sell on proposal. Writing a proposal is a really good thing to do, because you have to go chapter by chapter and do the outlines, and you have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end to your chapters and have that arc. And it's probably one of the best things I did for Knockdown. I wrote Knockdown first, and then I wrote the proposal, and it really helped me tighten up the arc and the characters and keep what's important. It's a really good exercise. And I think right now you are uniquely positioned, Abby, to send this out, pitch away, query your manuscript, and get it out there for sure.
100%.
And Megan, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Aileen. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say Megan Margulies, my partner in crime for the Witches of Pitches, just wrote something important in the chat. So, which just, I can't see it anymore, but it looked important. So
Write a killer proposal and query. You have the bylines, get going.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%, 100%. If you could honestly finish your book at a decent quality in 6 to 8 months, try to sell it on proposal while you finish the book. And it is very, very helpful to have a professional eye on your book proposal, because it really is a very specific document that needs a really specific format. If you are friends with Daniela Mastaniak-Young, who is here today, Daniela had a beautiful proposal that helped sell her book Uncultured. And if you ask her extremely nicely, she might be willing to share it with you. Daniela, I hope I'm not putting you massively on the spot. Okay, in just a moment, we're going to dive into some breakout rooms, but I want to hit just like the lightning round here. Lucy Frost asks, when you are correcting auto captions on Instagram, her revisions aren't sticking. If she has to go back in and make another revision, she has to redo them both. If anyone here is really good at Instagram captions, please volunteer your name in the chat, because I know that neither Charla nor I nor Aileen know the answer to this question. And I don't know it because in Dubai, we do not have captions on Instagram yet because I don't know, we don't speak English over here or something like that. Rachel asks, I have a regularly published chapbook and would like to start some reels on Instagram. Are there any strategies for success? Aileen, do you do anything with reels?
So like I said at the beginning, I don't do Instagram very often. Sometimes I post a picture. That's not the platform I focus on. I'm really sorry. I just don't like to record myself. So I'm not on Reels. I'm not even sure what Reels are, to be perfectly honest.
I make fake reels where it's a still photo or it's a photo with not very much movement in it, but it's technically a video. I would say if it's a chapbook, why don't you read some short, meaningful selections over pieces of beautiful stock photography from Unsplash that conveys your mood. Kathy with a C asks, my memoir's debuting in November 2023. Pre-sales are scheduled for August. When should I be scheduling podcasts to promote my memoir? Aileen, how far in advance does she need to be getting in touch?
So I began pitching podcasts and radio 6 months in advance. They schedule out for a long time. If you want your podcast to appear on the day of your launch or the week of your launch, you have to start as soon as possible. And you know, I was doing podcasts for 6 months after my book launch. So it's okay if you're still doing podcasts, and you know, it's a long game. So it's okay if it's not right during the week of your launch.
100%. Our last lightning round question, Kathy with a K asks, how do you address different audiences for the same book? My book is about walking 1,400 miles across Europe with my husband in my late 50s. So one audience is women 40, 50, and 60 interested in long-term marriage and relationships. The other audience is people who are interested in long-distance walking and adventuring across Europe. Well, first of all, Kathy, get in touch with Rachel Ruckert, who just released East Winds, which covers a similar topic. And I bet you and Rachel could do a really cool joint event. She's in the chat right now if you are present, Kathy. Aileen, how should she hit up two different audiences?
Yeah, I love this question. I actually did a whole segment in my Writer's Digest workshop on this. What I would say is rip apart the themes in your book, write them down, and then find publications that address each of those themes, then pitch those publications. So if you have outdoor magazines, hiking magazines, walking magazines, the thousands of magazines that cater to women 40s, 50s, 60s, ARP, Glamour, Elle. I mean, there's so many. Companion pieces are really the way to go. Facebook groups, join walking groups, hiking groups, expat groups. Really think outside the box.
100% agree. Decide what about your book appeals to that audience, then find that audience and pitch to a place that serves that audience. And that's where those wonderful interest-based Facebook groups can also be helpful. And we want to let you know that Aileen and the Witches of Pitches have a very special thing. Aileen, will you tell us, please, what are the Witches of Pitches and what is the special thing that you are offering?
Yeah, so I am so excited to talk about the Witches of Pitches. It's a new editing and consulting service started by myself and the amazing Megan Margulies, who is here today. She's an amazing journalist, author, and editor. And we have teamed up to help authors, writers, no matter what stage in their career that they're in, take their writing to the next level. And we help with pitches, companion pieces, book proposals, manuscripts, platform building. Our website is witchesofpitches.com.
And we'll also link that in the follow-up email.
Yes, and we are, essays, everything, companion pieces, articles, we help with everything. And right now we're doing a Start Your New Year's Right special, WRITE. And for all Writers Bridge attendees, we're offering 25% off all our services across the board now till January 15th. You just have to sign up with us by January 15th. You don't have to submit it. We'll just, we'll go from there, but just head over to the Witches of Pitches and cast your spell.
Ooh, love that. Absolutely love that. I want to invite everyone in just a moment. We're going to give you the 3 things you can do today to start your writing 2023 off right. One thing you can do is join us for the next episode. In 2023, we are going to be going to once a month instead of every other week because life is just starting to speed up again. We will usually see you the 3rd Tuesday of every month, but our next episode will actually be January 31st, and we are going to have Jane Friedman to talk about platform and publishing trends in 2023. Charla, what else do we have happening in January?
Well, we're hoping to have a panel of about residencies. We're working right now to figure out ways that we can offer information about how to secure grants for residencies and to make killer applications for those. So still in the works, can't actually confirm it's going to happen, but keep your eye out on your inbox because good things are going to happen in 2023. I just have a real sense about it.
Absolutely. And that will be a bonus event in January. We hope, fingers crossed, watch your email. Aileen, what is your number 1 tip for something that people can do today for their writing or their platform?
So going into the new year, I'm going to say, focus on something that brings you joy. Just do something that makes you happy, set a goal, and get it done.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Charla, what would you say to people to start their new year off right, their writing new year?
First of all, I'll say, good job. You're already thinking about it. You're already on your way. Well, I'm new here. And so my advice is a little bit the advice I give myself, which is do something new and courageous. Put yourself out there to meet new people, new groups. You never know what opportunities are just around the corner. And thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it, everyone.
I love that. We're so glad to have you on board, Charlotte. Thank you so much, Aileen, for being such an incredible guest. And I want to encourage everybody, find the people who are your perfect people, because if something happens in your work, if you are saying weird stuff online, if you are writing weird stuff online, your perfect people are going to find it perfect. Be yourself, because that is who your people need to meet, need to be with, and those are the people who need your words. Please feel free to unmute yourselves for a joyful goodbye. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Everybody. See you next year. Bye.
Until next year.
Great.